Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 280 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. Ryan and Trey here with you this evening, back for another CFL Offseason Roundtable. We get 1 week closer to the kickoff of CFL Free Agency, less than 2 weeks away at this point in time. Lots of news from around the CFL. Some re-signings, some new signings, some big names being let go as player bonuses kick in. A lot of them kick in February 1st, and it's January 30th right now. So some big names being let go and a bit of a head start on free agency. And, of course, the Ed Hervey legal tampering window of the CFL, the official negotiation window, I believe, starting in the next couple of days. So a very exciting time around the CFL offseason. Lots to talk about today. Trey, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing pretty good, man. Still kind of pissed off about the NFL results, but other than that, I'm doing good. Ready for CFL, man. I don't know about this Chiefs-Eagles game, so I'm really looking forward to let's see what the CFL looks like in the next few weeks.
I told you all it was going to happen.
I knew it was going to I knew it was going to happen, but it's one of those things where I can dream. I can dream.
You can dream for sure. Yeah, I wasn't surprised about that one. I was surprised but the Commanders didn't do so hot in that game against the Eagles.
Rookie quarter. Actually, he played perfect. I know he had a couple picks, but he played really well. And that's a team to look out for, I think, over the next few years. Give them an off season and a little bit more. That's going to be scary, especially when they're in a division with the Giants and Cowboys. So, I mean, the Eagles will be the only kind of competition in that one, and they're getting older. But yeah, it was quite a game, and you got to feel for the Bills. You got to feel for them a little bit. As Bomber fans, we understand 3 straight Grey Cup trips and 3 straight losses. The Bills had 4 straight and never won one, so you kind of have to feel for that a little bit. But Mahomes is the best football player in the world right now, and he shows it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And yeah, definitely know what it feels like, right?
Let's talk about the other football where a quarterback who used to throw to Travis Kelce in a league that he plays for, and Zach Claros and the Bombers and those other 8 teams. Let's talk about that, Ryan.
Oh, that was a great transition, Trey. I love it.
I know. I'm getting ready, Ryan, just in case, man. Just in case you take a vacation. I'm always ready.
Oh, perfect. That's great to hear. No vacation right now, but maybe at some point this year. We'll see. But yeah, we're going to talk about all of the big news from around this week. We're also going to make some predictions here tonight on where some of these top CFL free agents land. If you missed last episode 279, we drafted our teams of top 5 remaining CFL free agents, Trey, Adam, and I, and none of them have been signed as of this point in the last week or so. So they're still out there on the board. So we're going to call our shot a little bit here and predict where we think these top 15 free agents of ours are going to land. And I've got a couple interesting bonus ones to talk about in there as well. We'll go rapid fire at the end of the show on that stuff. We'll also take your comments and questions in the live chat throughout the night. And that's all thanks to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. You can learn more at GameTimeTV.ca or Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. As always, we do want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Check out the Discord as well. Link is in the episode description. Free to join us over there. Lots of chatter going on. Lots of news being shared as lots of news is coming out around the CFL. So feel free to chime in on the conversation. Link is in the episode description. It's free to join us over there. And of course, we're doing these weekly episodes throughout January, leading towards CFL Free Agency opening day on February 11th. And that's our big event of the year. We're bringing it back this year. As previously mentioned on last week or the week before the podcast, CFL Free Agent Frenzy 2025 is this year, February 11th, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. We will be live, as we have been for the last 5, or I think this is our 5th year in a row, 8 hours of live coverage of CFL Free Agency. And this year we're doing it in support of CFL Fans Fight Cancer. So looking to turn this fun event. We put a lot of work into it every year, and let's see if we can do some good in the world as part of it. So if you missed it, go back on our social feeds or in our YouTube feed or podcast feeds. I have a little promo for that that I put out the other day. And we hope you tune in. We hope you help us spread the news, and we hope you do a little donating as part of it as well. And let's make this event a huge success. I know I'm excited for it.
Oh yeah, always exciting, man. An excuse to sit at a computer for 8 hours. Like, why not?
That sounds like my everyday.
That's well, yeah, I guess so. Fair. Yeah. I've just been playing too much Red Dead 2 lately. I just need something else to do.
Well, you'll have 8 hours of CFL to talk about on that particular day. So, get the vocal cords warmed up and ready to go. And
me. There we go.
All right, you're all ready. Well, then let's dive.
Ryan, I'm a world famous racetrack announcer. I'm always ready to drop on a dime.
Oh, perfect.
You don't need to roll your eyes, Mrs. Colbeck in the background. Sorry, anyway, she's just the one time she. Sorry, behind the scenes there. She doesn't like when I call her out, so we don't do that.
All right.
It's off season, Ryan. Like we're not serious, and we're just vibes. It's gonna be just vibes till June, and even then, just vibes.
It's all vibes in 2025 for sure. Well, one city where the vibes aren't great right now is Winnipeg with the Blue Bombers, and we'll start right there. I think is a good starting point as we get into the major news from this week, and the two first big items to talk about. The Bombers seem to be moving on from linebacker Adam Bighill, and there's been some debate over whether or not the team actually gave him a heads up about that or not. And the team is also moving on from wide receiver Drew Wolotarski, which he announced on Instagram this week, and I believe the Bombers followed that up officially announcing his release as well. It's caused quite the storm in Bomberland, I think, right? These are two guys that have been a big focal point of the last 5-year runs of the Grey Cup for this team. They've been big members of the community, and people aren't too happy with that.
No, but I mean, business. I mean, I get it. Like Wolotarski threw me off a little bit at first, if I'm going to be honest, but deeper thought, I was like, is this them trying to say we're trying to keep Schoen and Lawler and all that? Because at first I was under the impression if they only could keep one, you would think that they would be able to fit in Wolotarski kind of somewhere as that 4-5 Canadian guy. But no, if you're going all steam ahead, thinking that, where would he play? If you got Lawler, Schoen, Dembski, Mitchell, and you said the name in the group chat, and I always forget about that other Canadian the Bombers have.
Yeah, it's Kevin Sklersius, their rookie from this last season.
Right.
Kind of made him expendable, right?
Right, but also if he's got a 2 or 3 year deal at 70, 80K, that's better than 150 whatever Wolotarski has as the veteran. So it makes sense. Bighill, the writing was on the wall. I'm actually more surprised he's playing or wants to play. What he said, that I thought the only thing I can maybe give him is maybe he in his head too thought this would be the farewell tour for all the boys. It's the Grey Cup at home. I could see that from Wolotarski and Bighill's perspective. But again, I don't know. People complain about it all. I was kind of thinking about it. How many times have we had a job where we wish we could get rid of somebody and we can't, right? And, football's tough. Wolotarski did nothing wrong to lose his job here in Winnipeg. Same with Bighill, other than age and expendability.
And
injuries. Right, where we've had people who call in sick every other day, and we wish our manager or boss fired them, and they won't. So, I can understand it from a couple's perspectives, but from sports, man, people have been cut for way less and way easier things than injuries and age. So, hopefully they find somewhere to go. I don't know him personally, but Biggie seems like a great maybe person who could coach one day. He just seems like that kind of mentality. Wolotarski, I've seen him play the guitar a few times at Cowboys, so I'm sure he's got a backup plan if he can't find a job in the CFL. But I'm sure there's a team in the CFL that would Canadian receiver is a hot commodity. Not everyone has a Dembski or a Philpott, right? So, or Gittins Jr. So there are some teams that have some availability and in that spot.
Yeah, my gut reaction when Wolotarski came out was a little surprised as well, because it's just been the staple of the Bombers for the past number of years. Dembski and Wolotarski being that 1-2 Canadian receiver punch. And Clarcius came in, and I thought he played pretty well last year. How many receiving yards did Kevin Clarcius have? I'm going to look that up because I feel like he made an impact, but it was limited given the other guys on the field. 352 yards. That's not bad for your rookie season as kind of the number 5 receiver, arguably there. I guess Wolotarski did get injured for a while, so he got some starting time as a result of that. But yeah, if he's much cheaper, I think it was $110,000 was Wolotarski's contract. He's been around for a little while. I get, when money is tight, that's a decision you're going to make if you're the Bombers. My one concern is now the depth. If you're planning to start 2 Canadian receivers and Clarcius takes that spot of Wolotarski, one of them goes down, who's going in to fill that role for the team? And I don't have it in my mind the full Canadian breakdown of the Bombers roster. I feel like they're a team that has started more Canadians than most teams in the last couple of years, and so maybe that all works out where they can get one American there. But I look at the other side of things as well, where one of your staple starting Canadians in the defensive backfield the past couple of years has been Tyrell Ford, who there's a lot of talk about how he's going to go to Edmonton to play with his brother potentially. So how does that impact the ratio for the team if one of these guys goes down? But I can see how they would prioritize probably spending some of that wide receiver money more so on a Schoen or a Lawler or some of the names out there in free agency than they would on Wolotarski, which sucks. He's been that old, reliable guy, second down, clutch catch whenever you need him, not too flashy all the time. I feel like you need a mix of receivers like that. You need the Kenny Lawler with the big plays, and you need a mix of a Drew Wolotarski type in there.
You do. And just how the way the league is, because we were talking about some guys like last week, like Kadeem Carey and Arbuckle, where are they going to go? Wolotarski, to me, might fit into that group who maybe doesn't get signed in February and March. He might be that guy in May, June when 30 riders get injured first week of training camp kind of thing happens, or some team has 3 or 4 receivers go down in preseason and early in the season, and again, a guy, and same with Big Hill. I put Big Hill in that kind of category too, where he's a guy that comes in at Labor Day and the team will win 5, 6, 7 games in a row and have one of the best defenses in the league going into the playoffs or something because he's not playing the full year. So I think those guys are will definitely help out some team. It's just a 9-team league, man. There's not many jobs.
There's not there. You're right. There's not a ton. A spot I see him really being a good fit, and he's not on the list of guys we're going to rapid fire call our shot on later in the show, but I'll call it now. I think Ottawa's a good fit. Some familiarity with Drew Brown. I think they're lacking in the Canadian receiver department. Nick Mardner seemed like maybe he has some promise there. But if I were to rank, as of right now, all the teams in the CFL in terms of Canadian depth at receiver, I'd probably have Ottawa closer to the bottom, assuming everybody re-ups with the teams they were with. So I see that being a good fit for somebody like him. And I was a little more bitter about the Wolotarski one, but I get it as well.
Give me Saskatchewan. I don't know if they're depth off the top of my head, but Andrew Harris coaching, Bryant on the O-line. Hardrick on the O-line. I could, they didn't call me either, Andrew, and they let me go. I could see there being a little revenge tour in Saskatchewan brewing against the Bombers.
For Wolotarski, I can't see it just because of Schaefer Baker and MLS there.
I'm not saying depth, could you imagine they get Strevler and Wolotarski and all these guys and Big Hill?
Can you imagine Big Hill in a Rider uniform?
Could you imagine Strevler? How much we would like talking about Adam about that?
Oh, yeah. Adam might not come back if that happens. What are the odds that if Strevler signs in Saskatchewan during free agent frenzy, that Adam just drops off the show and doesn't come back for the rest of the day?
Doesn't tell us anything, yeah.
Yeah, on the other hand, I feel like the Big Hill one was the bigger controversial one, right? Because this is a guy that we have been watching for arguably, a decade now, top player in the CFL for many years. Like, he has had a heck of a career, Adam Big Hill has, in both his time in BC and his time here in Winnipeg. But his play has declined the last couple of years, and injuries have played a little bit of a role in that. And I think if Tony Jones didn't play as good as he did this past season, maybe we're not having this type of conversation about Big Hill, but it was absolutely the right call to me. And I think this was something we had all been saying here on the podcast, kind of start of the offseason, that you got to prioritize keeping Tony Jones over Adam Big Hill. And they did that with the 2-year extension for Jones. And just earlier today, I believe, also signing Jonathan Jones, who was let go by the Toronto Argonauts, who I've been seeing a lot of talk about him being a real quality addition to the linebacking core for the Bombers. So it's one of those things where people grow attached to the players that they fall in love with, right? And the CFL is a tough business more so than other leagues, I would say, in that regard. Like, you see that in hockey. I mean, there's talk right now about, is Sidney Crosby going to get traded? And that seems like unfathomable for something like that to happen. I'm a Tampa Bay Lightning fan. Did I see Steven Stamkos going to Nashville? Heck no, right? You grow attached to those players and people don't want to see them go. But you also have to realize when the right time to see them go is.
Oh, 100%. Jays, I'm waiting for Vladdy to get traded or re-sign somewhere else, or Bichette, and talk about the Jets. I'm still surprised they got rid of Line, second round overall pick.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be, every league has that in the CFL. Yeah, turnover is probably the worst. So when you do have that guy like Wolartarski or Big Hill, that's kind of been a staple for last years, and I think again Winnipeg, we could sit and get, like I think I said it last week, we got spoiled with Stiegel. Guys like that, who plays 20 years in one team in any league anymore. So it happens. But I mean, Big Hill, I think the two most controversial parts of these two guys for me was the no communication. But I guess you're going to fall back and say, well, why would we give these guys communication if we didn't give it to Harris? I mean, like, if they're following, and I'm not pointing any fingers at Kyle Walters. He's probably following proper, I want to say protocol, but he's probably following the same way that the other 8 general managers do, and the other 9 general managers have done for these teams for the last 50 years. Not saying it's right, but that's probably the mentality they've done. It's probably similar to how it gets dealt in the NFL, UFL, other sports, right? There's probably kind of a thing. Well, they probably don't know. It's probably, if you've seen any like behind the scenes rooms, they probably have a big whiteboard. And they probably have a circle of these guys are going to stay here. But then, this guy's interested in coming to Winnipeg. Maybe it was that trade or that signing they were trying to make today. Maybe they're talking about this or that. They have these moving pieces where they're like, we'll keep Wolartarski if this. But there must have been but he can't tell Wolartarski that.
Yeah.
Because then Wolartarski's thinking he's staying. And then, just kidding, Schoen and Lawler both re-signed for $20,000 extra. Now we have to cut you. Like, it's easier just to wash your hands clean, don't say anything, and you move on. Now, and that's unfortunately how it kind of goes. But I really enjoy, we could talk about this one. I really enjoyed the Eugene Lewis one, where he commented on that story from Farhan Lodgy saying that Edmonton's not planning on bringing him back, saying, well, who told you that? Like that I think is also funny, because that's a guy with some personality kind of making more fun of the situation and kind of the stupidity of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing in the social media world, and how everything, like a lot of news is going to be broken before we go live on Free Agent Frenzy Day and reported, right, by these inside reporters who have access to social media and can send everything out immediately before we get the official word on any of these things, where there are conversations and sources leak different things. And hopefully that Eugene Lewis didn't actually just find out he doesn't have a job in Edmonton that he thinks he has due to report like this, but it's a harsh world in the information era, so to say, where information comes out lightning quick, and you see it time and time again where a guy finds out from the wrong way because all it takes is something to leak, and one person sees it, and suddenly your phone's blowing up with text messages saying you're leaving Edmonton, and meanwhile Lewis probably just out at dinner with friends or something. It was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm leaving Edmonton. This was news to me. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I do going back to what you were saying though about like the whiteboard and making all the plans and not telling them. That is a very good point where one of the things that's been lost in the story from the Bomber side of things, I think that hasn't been considered enough, is when did they make the decision to move on from Big Hill and from Wolodarski? It might literally have been today based on how things have been shaking out with the Bombers roster and with some of the signings from around the CFL, right? A guy gets released by another team. Now suddenly you circle him into your plans and you start thinking, okay, maybe this isn't going to be a bring back option. So yeah, not giving him a heads up well in advance, doesn't make sense if you don't know well in advance that he's not going to be the guy. That being said, I think we've all kind of been, at least with Big Hill, of the opinion since the start of the offseason. So it's likely going to be the case, but you never know because this is a team built on loyalty, right? That keeps bringing the same guys back over and over.
Yeah, I'll be honest, because we were talking as two Bomber fans here. We've been talking about that, and I'm a little bit pleasantly surprised in a good way. Yep. They're not showing loyalty. Maybe Wolodarski's one again where I don't think it would have hurt, but I thought, oh man, if you're giving Big Hill, unless he comes in at league minimum, and saying like, I just want to play for Winnipeg, I'll do it for whatever league minimum is nowadays, a veteran league minimum, because again, I'm like, sounds like the guy they just signed today, Jones, might be very, very I know it's like you can't replace Big Hill, but you could also, but you might be able to replace the 37-year-old Big Hill, yeah. And actually it was funny talking about the NFL games when Washington was doing that goal line stand on defense and the guy kept jumping over. I just kept thinking about Big Hill doing that. And maybe Big Hill would have timed it up right. But other than that, because I think the CFL even posted that video again over the week. But yeah, you got to move on sometimes. And yeah, talk about like how many times have I played Madden and week 10, you're like, oh, this guy, I'm going to get rid of him. I just can't, you can't have it. And then magically 5 million in cap space opens up and you're like, okay, I can keep him now. And sometimes that 5 million disappears and you're like, I got to get rid of the veteran because I want to keep, I'm not going to cut the rookie or the up and comer. So yeah, there are a lot of moving parts. And I think the CFL might almost be worse because you got to think there's a whole slew of Americans that coming out of college or coming out of the UFL. How many former NFLers seem to have been signed by other teams this last week too? You never know. We got a Canadian quarterback in the All-Star or the college All-Star game or East versus West game down there. You're calling them the Canadian Heisman, which is funny. Winner. We got Curtis Rourke. You got all these different moving pieces that could happen. And I think that, the CFL is probably one of the harder leagues to figure all this out in. And Wolodarski and Big Hill, I don't think are pieces big enough to also go over the salary cap for.
No.
I don't think they're... it's not Nathan Rourke. If you're gonna go over and pay the fine, take Nathan Rourke, take Curtis Rourke, take Vernon Adams, take Trey Ford, take something like that. Where those two guys, I wouldn't do it for them.
Yeah,
Tyrell Ford, I would go over the salary cap to keep Tyrell Ford in Winnipeg. With that, but
it's the art of tough business decisions, right? Like we look back at it, like Andrew Harris move wasn't popular at the time, but look at what Brady Oliveira became. The Adam Big Hill move right now, not popular, but I think Tony Jones is an excellent replacement and a superstar in the making. Kevin Scorsius might be a great replacement for what Drew Wolodarski is. And the ability to make those tough decisions when the fan base is against them and, it hurts the fan base a little bit. They're going to lead to winning. They're going to lead to a team that's been able to make it 5 straight Grey Cups. And ultimately, you have to do something that puts you over the edge. And I do wonder, as we just wrap up this part of the conversation, if, let's say we weren't in this 5 straight Grey Cup era. Let's say we were in the drought. are fans as attached to these moves as they were? No, right? Because they're saying we need to do something different.
Half a roster wouldn't be here. They would have got rid of, like, you know what I mean? If they even if we had the one Grey Cup, let's say 2019, and then after that, I don't think Caleros would be here. I don't think I don't think Big Hill, I don't think half the guys would be here. Even if we got the drought broken and it wasn't 4 straight or however many years of playoff misses, I think we would have rebuilt 2 or 3 years ago. And in a 9-team league, I think losing in the Grey Cup is not much far off.
No.
Then not making the playoffs. So if you don't, in a 9-team league, I can give, like, we're talking NFL again, I can give Washington a huge pass. They ain't blowing stuff up from losing in the NFC Championship. Same with Buffalo. They're probably not blowing things up. But when you lose, and Philly and KC, whoever loses, they ain't blowing things up because they're the second best out of 32 teams. They're the top 4 teams out of 32. But when you're second or third out of 9, and really in a league, that's where I'm like, nah, you might have to blow some things up. And I'm going to sound like a broken record. Replay the tape. How long have I said they've maybe needed to blow some things up? And I can understand that the home Grey Cup is kind of the last hoorah, the farewell tour for some of these boys, probably to try to sell the Grey Cup ticket, saying, hey, you want to watch Caleros play one more time in a Bomber jersey? Might be November at Princess Auto Stadium. Now, I doubt it, but maybe. So.
Yeah, he might not have a ton of fans right now, but I'm a big fan of what Kyle Walters has done so far this offseason. My one ask moving forward is let's figure out what the plan is at quarterback, because there currently is no clear succession plan behind Zach Caleros, and I think they desperately need one.
Yeah, unless they got a crazy negotiation list that we don't know about.
Yeah.
But
well, let's move on. I guess, do you want to go into you mentioned Eugene Lewis. Maybe
sure.
let's cycle back to that one, because that's interesting. One of the biggest names potential out there in free agency of, where is Eugene Lewis going to go? What's going to happen with him? Dave Campbell tweeting out earlier today, just to review Elks GM Ed Hervey's stance on Geno Lewis. Basically, it sounds like the Elks want Geno Lewis back at wide receiver. Now, he is a guy that 2 years ago, I think it was, they signed him to a $300,000 deal. We've seen a couple of them like that. Lewis did that. I think the year before that, they signed Kenny Lawler to $300,000. There's been a couple big name receivers hovering around that $300K mark. But he's basically saying we want him back, but we're not going to pay him that much because we have other holes to fill. And that Hervey thinks that the receiving market needs a reset, and it needs to come down all the way to $250,000 to $270,000 for there to even be a discussion on Eugene Lewis coming back. What do you think of this this proposed reset by Ed Hervey on the receiving market?
I kind of agree and I kind of don't. So the part where I agree is we were talking about this last year, 2-3 years ago. Like, let's look at I always hate bringing back the Bombers, but that's just the one in my head. How the hell did they fit in Lawler, Schoen, Dembski, and all this because of that crazy amount of money, and Oliveira and Caleros? And again, I don't know how half the CFL teams fit it under 5 point whatever million the salary cap is anymore, when most quarterbacks get over $500,000. And starting running back, or a good, not a starting running back, but if receivers get 2 to 3, and you got 3 or 4 of those guys, now not all of them are getting that. Like, it seems like the offense alone's already getting 2 to 3 million, and then you got to pay some guys, and then some teams pay a guy like Janarian Grant a couple $100,000 to just kick the ball. So I don't know how these guys do it. So yes and no. Yes, I think it needs a reset. I also think our salary cap might need to go up, but I understand that there's like a structure in place, so you can't just, it's based off of formulas and income and all that. But yeah, is Eugene Lewis worth $300,000? Probably in the CFL market. I think he is. Does it fit under a 5.6 million, whatever the salary cap is, 5 point some $1 million salary cap? Probably not, especially in Edmonton where you got Trey Ford and Fajardo now. Yeah, and I think they reworked their contracts, but still, those two guys combined must be $500,000 plus, kind of area. You got to pay for defense. You got to pay for other things. Like, you can't pay one guy $300,000 if you don't have someone throwing them the ball, or you don't have guys protecting the ball thrower, or you don't have a run game, or you don't have the guy stopping the ball the other way. Chris Jones ain't there anymore to make your defense good. He's in Chapel Hill, right? So I can see both sides of it. And again, we talk about the CFL. The CFL is probably one of the best leagues to sometimes have next man up, where you can find that American because Eugene Lewis at one point was an American getting paid league minimum in the CFL, who probably didn't even know what Edmonton was. And now he's saying that he deserves to be one of the highest paid receivers in this league. So I don't know. I'm not really giving a straight answer. I could see both sides, man. Yeah, but I mean, all sports needs a reset. Should Ohtani be getting $50 million a year in baseball? Hell no. Hell no. Should McDavid and McMatthews be getting 15, 20, whatever they get paid in hockey? No, they probably shouldn't, because it eats up such ridiculous amount of the cap, where I'm not surprised Edmonton doesn't have a fourth line in hockey, or say with the Maple Leafs. I'm not surprised. Some of those teams don't have serious lines, and the only way it works in baseball is there's no freaking salary cap. The Dodgers are paying $400 million in salary cap, right? So in a league with a salary cap, I mean, you kind of have to reset it at sometimes, and quarterbacks are going off, and maybe we're kind of mimicking what NFL is doing, because the two highest paid positions is quarterback and receiver down there. So I mean, I guess we're kind of modeling it after that, even though traditionally the CFL, a lot of highest paid players were offensive linemen, we're defensive players. So
if I'm Geno Lewis, though, I'm not backing down. If Edmonton doesn't want to give me the bag, somebody else in the CFL absolutely will. I'm
sure there is one for him. He's not a guy like Isaiah Wallatarski who won't be unsigned come February 11th, or even if there's a handshake agreement before that in the negotiation. He'll wait till the 11th just to see when people match. But he's probably the first domino. Wallatarski probably isn't going to get signed until we find out what happened, because you were talking about maybe Wallatarski. I know the Canadian thing is different. Was that him? Was it Eugene Lewis? Because somebody tweeted something about him having the wrong passport too. Was that him?
I don't think so. I don't know anything about this, but yeah,
somebody said something on Twitter, and I swear it was Eugene Lewis replying to somebody saying, "Oh, he must have been born in the wrong country, because if he was Canadian, he would have had it." Or something, but maybe it was somebody else. But I don't really care enough to find it. Heck with Twitter, it's all crazy now. But like I said, he's going to be the first domino, so hopefully he goes on the 11th, so then we have something to talk about. Because if he holds out to the 12th, 13th, 14th, or later, like you said, Wallatarski might not get signed. If Schoen or Lawler are waiting to see, they might not get signed, because I think Lewis with Schoen and Lawler are kind of the big dominoes if they're still available come the 11th.
Yeah, and I'd throw Justin McInnes probably into that category.
Right, I forgot.
Yeah, but Eugene Lewis last year, 1,070 yards despite questionable quarterback situation with the back and forth between McLeod Bethel-Thompson and Trey Ford throughout the year last year. Really came on strong late in the year. Had 8 straight games, I think it was, with a touchdown to end the season. Eugene Lewis did. When he was a free agent a couple of years ago, when he left Montreal to go to Edmonton, I'm pretty sure 8 different teams reached out to him in free agency. And everybody should be trying to reach out to Eugene Lewis and figuring out how much it's going to cost them. And if Edmonton doesn't want to pay that price, I am certain there is a CFL team out there that's going to be willing to do it. I don't know how. I think the problem we're seeing with a lot of the sports stuff where you're like, oh yeah, these guys shouldn't be making this much, is how do you get a reset on the price if there's always going to be somebody willing to pay it? And that, I'm no economics major, but I'm kind of wondering, is when we talk about inflation, is that it as well, right? With a lot of stuff is somebody's always going to be willing to pay that price. And so you can keep jacking the price up as much as you need to when that happens, until it gets too high that then nobody can afford it, but somebody definitely can. And I've been saying a lot over the last couple of years that, when we talk about, do you spend $300K on a receiver? Do you spend on the offensive line, etc.? The position I'm actually spending less on than most teams is the quarterback position, because we've seen a lot of teams be successful in recent years from a cheap quarterback where they spent all their money at receiver and offensive line to hook them up with the weapons. We saw that with Nathan Rourke taking over in BC. We saw that when Chad Kelly came in for Toronto. There's probably blanking on a couple of the other scenarios here, but we've seen these cheaper quarterbacks stacked with options and be successful for that. So I want to see teams go more that direction. If there's any position I want to see the reset at, it's almost the quarterback position when it comes to salaries. But will Lewis stay in Edmonton? Who knows? Edmonton's one of those interesting teams at receiver where Lewis is a free agent. Dylan Mitchell is probably their number 2 guy. He's off to Winnipeg. I'm blanking on the rest of the receiving core there, but Tevin Jones, I think, a free agent as well. Edmonton's an interesting team to see what they're going to do at wide receiver this offseason, whether it's going to be bring a lot of these guys back or not.
No, I agree with that, man. I agree with the quarterback because it's again, you see that in both leagues. Again, I don't understand how you can build a team when you pay someone like a big, like what's I guess half. Well, Caleros is half or $600,000. That's over 1/10 of the salary cap with one guy, and you got to fit 40 other guys under that. Like it doesn't make sense. And you want to put, and then I know the quarterbacks in Edmonton aren't quite the same, but imagine if Fajardo was still a $500,000 quarterback and Lewis and probably trade 40 out of a little bit. That's almost $1 million there and 3 guys. And you still got to fit 40 guys in 4 point some million, with the minimum being 60,000 or 67,000. And you want to talk about inflation. Are they paid in US dollars? I know the salary cap's Canadian, but anyway, talk about inflation. I bet these Americans don't like playing up here right now. If without getting too political, I wonder if the inflation kind of gets in. Someone like Eugene Lewis is like, hey, I'm living in a different country. Maybe I do need to make a little bit more because I don't know how that stuff works either. Yeah,
Yeah, no, you're sorry. I got distracted for a second. Shout out to somebody in the Discord who just said, this is how you make the podcast larger than life. Somebody's currently watching the podcast on a 100-inch screen, which I can only imagine how large our heads are. That is terrifying.
Is that their boy Richard?
I believe it is.
Richard, we got some guys. I don't want to say number 1 fan because we got a few, but we need to we almost have a number 1 fan club. There's a handful of guys that are just the best. And I want Richard to know on the 100-foot screen or whatever he's watching on that I'm telling him he's in that group. And there's a couple other guys, but yeah, that's the only way to watch. It's the only way to watch.
Yeah. Only 100 feet? Come on. Or 100 inches. 100 inches? 100 inches. 100 feet would be insane. Feet.
That's a projector on the side of a building. That'd be wild.
That's the next step.
Well, this is Canadian. Is it 100 centimeters? 100 inches? 100 inches. That's still a pretty big TV, man. That's a Christmas present. Nice Christmas present, Rich.
Good to have you listening as always. Curly Giddens Jr. was the big name I forgot at that Edmonton does still have under contract at wide receiver. Of course, can't forget about him. But yeah,
down here though. Didn't he move into Edmonton?
Who's that?
Giddens? He wasn't quite the same moving to Edmonton as he was in Toronto.
No, he was pretty good. He was pretty good last season, yeah.
Maybe I'm just thinking from a fantasy thing, he kind of pissed me off.
But well, maybe. A lot of your team did, so.
You know what? I'm number 1 in a hockey fantasy league, Ryan, that I'm in, but that's okay.
That's great. Congrats.
Because I have Hellebuck, that's why.
Oh, yeah. That just seems like a cheat code.
Yeah. Anyway, what's the next team? What else has been going on? BC? Didn't BC?
Well,
let's go somewhere else.
Yeah, let's go through some of the news items here and stop me along the way if there's any you want to touch on. I'll go in chronological order since last time we were on the podcast. According to CFL.ca news, the Argos signed American defensive lineman Andre Carter, who was the negotiation rights piece from the Daniel Adeboboye trade. So I don't know. You see those trades sometimes. The only interesting thing I have on that is you see these trades sometimes for future considerations or negotiation rights players, and you kind of wonder okay, did you give them away for free? Are you actually going to land that player? So kudos to the Argos for getting a negotiation list player that they actually signed to their roster.
I always wonder that. I see that in baseball a lot where they say someone got traded for future considerations. And I'm like, what if the team goes no later? What are you going to do? Like, future. So it's kind of like that neg list. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Or what if management changes and
Yeah.
like if it's future considerations, what if they forgot to like leave the note that there are future considerations?
Now, nowadays, everything's on social media, and I'm sure there's some record at the league office. I just wonder what the penalty is. I know. In baseball, when there's 30 draft picks, take a draft pick. I don't care. I'm not giving them a player.
I would love to know how often future considerations turns into anything.
Most times,
If you were traded for future considerations, just take it as your team does not want you anymore.
I could be traded for the next Patrick Mahomes, or I could be traded for the next washing machine. I don't know.
Yeah. Anything in between. What other news do we have? Well, we talked about Drew Olatarski being released by the Bombers already. That was a big one. The Riders signed defensive lineman Shane Ray, formerly spent time with the Argos and has been in the NFL the last couple of seasons. So you talked about guys coming back from the NFL, spent time with the Bills and the Tennessee Titans, and he originally came from the NFL before that. I think I remember him being a pretty good piece of that Argos defensive line when he was here. So a nice little piece there for the Riders to add to theirs. The Red Blacks signed offensive lineman Jacob Ruby to an extension. So another piece of that offensive line back for Ottawa. Ottawa's been busy re-signing a lot of their pieces. What do you make of that? We talked a little bit about it last week with some of the receivers. Ottawa last year, good season, kind of tanked in the second half, but obviously improvement from the terrible years the year before. Are they a team where you're just bringing everybody back and hoping they gel, or are you looking to make big splashes?
A little bit of both. I think you keep the core because nothing was wrong with some of the core, and they kind of signaled that Drew Brown's kind of the guy going forward, and I would keep the main bits together. But once February 11th or negotiation comes, talk to a guy like Olatarski, talk to a guy like Geno Lewis, talk to some of these guys and say, hey, we got salary cap, we got a young quarterback that can throw you the ball. And if there's some offensive linemen, because I know that was kind of an issue, or some defensive pieces. But I wouldn't go crazy and like get rid of Brown and the guys the pieces they already have, right? Don't they have a good? I'm blanking. I had a long day today. Who's their receivers already?
Ottawa receiving core: Braylon Addison, Justin Hardy,
yes, what I mean. They already got a pretty good core, I think. So again, you add a guy like Lewis or Olatarski, you add some depth to your old line and shore up that. And I think I think you could say that for almost 7 of the teams in the league that they need better defense. So I wouldn't hate that. I don't mind what Ottawa's doing. I think they're gonna have a big jump up, and I hope anyway. I'm
rooting for them for
I'm
sure.
Rooting for them. I definitely would like. I'd rather see them up there over Montreal or Toronto again. And no hate to those two teams, but I like it being a nice rotation every year. I don't want Chiefs Eagles every year. I don't mind Ottawa having a good year, and heck, give Saskatchewan or BC or some of those teams that are just kind of missing it out in the West. I don't need to see Winnipeg for a 6th straight Grey Cup appearance against Toronto or Montreal, right? So I think Ottawa would definitely be a good one. Maybe Hamilton. Haven't really heard much from Hamilton, have we? Have we gotten to that part of the list yet?
No, Hamilton has not done much at all so far this offseason. They had the smallest list of potential free agents coming in, and I this week have been going back and compiling all of the news since the start of the offseason for each team to build the free agent tracker for Free Agent Frenzy, and the Ticats had like 3 notable transactions, and that was it. So they've been pretty quiet so far.
Did they rework Bo's contract again?
They did. Yeah, they did there. But yeah, I get what you're saying. On Ottawa, I don't know. It was sad to watch late in the season the way this team fell off after such a promising start to the year. So wishing better for this year for them. I see a number of good questions from the aforementioned Richard in the chat that I think we'll get to in a couple of moments, but let's keep going through the list of free agent signings first. The Alouettes re-signed kick returner James Letcher Jr. to a 1-year extension. Love that move for them. He was dynamite for them last season, one of the most explosive returners in the CFL. Bit of a surprising releases by the Calgary Stampeders, defensive lineman Mike Rose and James Vaughters. I believe Mike Rose has been with the team for quite some time now, if I'm not mistaken. Both joined the Stamps in 2017, so that's for some reason somehow 8 years ago at this point in time. Time is crazy. I can't believe 2017 is 8 years ago. And according to CFL.ca, 4-time West Division All-Star for the Stamps was Mike Rose. So that's another big name on the defensive line. You look at teams around the league, and there's a couple big names we've already talked about last week in terms of top free agents out there. Add another one to the list in Mike Rose.
Yeah. Did you mention did Beatty get cut from Edmonton too?
I have not yet. I think that was one of the next ones on the list. But yeah, Boris Beatty out in Edmonton as well. Question marks on what their kicking game is going to be.
I can't remember the names. I feel like a punter or two went down south too. So the kicking game's changing a little bit up this year too, it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Boris Beatty's one of those I've been back and forth on. And he has been back and forth the last couple of years. Went from like the worst kicking percentage in the league to suddenly the best to struggling in some regards last year again. I think they even benched him, I want to say, for Labor Day and put in the backup or something like that this past year. So not a huge surprise to see him gone from Edmonton, and maybe they're looking to give some other guys a chance here. Scrolling through the list, seeing who else is notable on the list. Javon Santos Knox re-signed by the Red Blacks, so that's another big piece there. I still remember him when he was in Winnipeg uniform. He was a stalwart, as they say, at the linebacker position there. And there's the Boris Beatty news as I scroll through things here. The Red Blacks, although they've been bringing back a lot of guys, releasing American defensive back Brandon Dandridge, who I feel like I've heard his name quite a bit over the last number of years as a notable piece. He was on the East Division All-Star team in 2023, so there's a lot of defensive backs out there. I think it was somebody in the chat last week saying there are like 38 of them available. We can see a lot of movement.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. I think the DB's kind of the running back of the defense kind of side where there might be cheaper options that you're not getting a huge drop off. And they, it's just kind of unfortunate how it is. If you're not a receiver, you're going to be, if you, what did I hear? Something on Madden used to always say either if you're a DB who can't catch or a receiver who can't catch, you'll be a DB. But if you're like a DB who can't tackle, then you'll be a receiver. So like they're kind of interchangeable sometimes. So I wonder if DBs are kind of like another dime a dozen, kind of like the running back, and very important position because you're trying to stop the most important players on the field, the receivers, and without having to be able to touch them. Right. So it's kind of a thankless job because you can get beat 10 times a game and you can't do anything about it because if you grab on the jersey, they could just throw that little yellow flag and the command center can give a huge penalty. Right. So I could see that being a tough position to fill. And again, it might just be one where you go with the $60,000 American who's never heard of a waggle before.
And it seems to work out well for some teams. Right. So,
yeah.
That's one of those positions where the most, I think we find that diamond in the rough you've never heard of that turns to a superstar every single year. So interesting to see where these big name defensive backs land. Other news, the Elks released veteran offensive lineman Brett Boyko, who had a pretty good year last year. So if somebody looking for offensive line help, there's another piece to puzzle out there as well. On the defensive line, the Ticats released defensive lineman Dwayne Hendricks, who I want to say came from Calgary before that and had 4 sacks and a forced fumble last year. So made an impact on that Ticats defensive line. And finally, the last big item here I want to talk about from the news this week came out just a couple of hours ago. Alexander Hollins released by the BC Lions. Now, if you go back to an episode last offseason where we counted down our top 10, I believe it was, wide receivers for the 2024 season, Adam and I both had Alexander Hollins as number 1 coming into the year last year. We were really high on him, and that paid off pretty well early on in the season when that whole BC offense exploded. But he really struggled, it seemed, in the second half of the season last year. What do you make of Holland's getting released by the Lions.
It's just BC showing that they can't keep that three-headed receiving monster anymore, and Nathan Rourke, and have a running back and have an offensive line like we talked about. Someone had to go. He was the odd man out, like you said, probably the one that probably showed struggles more often than not. Yeah, wonder where he'll land. Maybe he could find a good Calgary, play with his former guy that he maybe has some stuff with there. You never know. But just the odd man out, and BC is one of those teams too that they just are just missing that one or two plays to get over Winnipeg or Saskatchewan or whoever in the playoffs over the last couple of years, right? So they got to get rid of an extra receiver to maybe find that defensive help, right, or whatever position they're lacking in.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And Hollins, he did struggle down the stretch. His catch rate was not great. He had a lot of games where he wasn't making the impact that we saw early on in the season. And I think he's still worth a look in free agency. Somebody should absolutely take a look at him, and he's going to be one of the biggest names out there. But I don't know if I'm giving him that $300,000 contract that we were talking about of potentially Eugene Lewis, right? I look at him more as a reliable, maybe second receiver type piece, but not as the number one guy. But somebody's going to give him the bag, and it could pay off for him because he is a very good receiver when he is on his game, as we saw a couple of times last season, including at least one 200-yard effort against the Bombers that was really fun to watch live early in the season.
Speaking of that, our renewal dates tomorrow to get those Grey Cup tickets. I keep getting the call and I keep putting it off because I don't want to tell them no.
I can say I will not have season tickets this year. And unfortunately, other priorities this year, I did have to give them up, but hoping I'd still get there to check out a game or two this season.
I just don't have a heart because they're always so nice, those ticket people. Why not? Too many damn Thursday games. That's why, Karen. I'm just kidding. Or do you get when that's like the recording of Pat Neufeld? I get that one like 3 times a week too. Don't forget to grade your Grey Cup tickets. And I'm like, okay, Pat.
Just take my money already. Just take. They're getting you at the same loyalty thing, Trey.
Loyalty. Too many Thursday games. I'd rather watch at home.
Just get into some of these chat comments here. Yeah, anyone watching the Arrow Up home turf the Lions put out? I have not yet, but I have seen a lot of hype about it, and I would like to check that out at some point. Absolutely. The Lions video team is top-notch, best in the CFL, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to. I've been really scraping the bottom of the barrel by watching habits lately, so maybe I will need to.
Lots of coaching changes this offseason. Yeah. Who is the most success? Who gets fired first? I've been thinking about this comment for the last few minutes while we've been talking through the news, and I'm blanking on like all of the coaching changes that have happened so far this season. I have to go back and listen to like 3 episodes ago, and we talked about them all.
All I could think about is Buck Pierce. That's the only name that I could think about, and I doubt he'll get fired because he was kind of given the reins for right now. But I don't know. I can't think of anything else either.
I'm excited to see what Mark Killam brings to Edmonton and what that dynamic brings, because the last couple of years I've had hype on the Elks, but then they dropped their first like 8 games of the season, and Chris Jones was a factor in all of that, and he left last year and Jarius Jackson took over, and I thought he did all right in the second half of the season, but I feel like the Chris Jones effect was still lingering a little bit. So I'm excited for a new year with Mark Killam. He sounds super pumped. I'll give a quick plug for our friends at the Turf District who had him on this week's episode and got a chance to chat with Coach Killam there. And it was a great conversation. And so I see him having the same Corey Mace effect we saw with the Riders, where just a real like character guy that might be what the Elks need to bring things together. And if they do that, I could see them entering that competitive realm in the West Division.
Yeah. If you want me to be honest, I think the nameless offensive coordinator in Winnipeg might be the first one getting fired.
Well, that's the next question here. Is Winnipeg making all their player moves without an offensive coordinator? Is that something in your mind they need to figure out in the next 11 days before free agency?
Maybe. I don't know. I know I don't know. I think if you're going to looking at Winnipeg and you're looking for coaching, I think that even though he's not offensive, I think just the culture of Osh might be enough that like, we trust in we trust in Osh, so whoever he brings in or whoever they bring in together under Osh would be satisfactory. But yeah, normally I'm actually kind of surprised right now that they don't. But but is everyone else the same except for Pierce left? Like, did we lose anybody else? I don't think so. I think all of our other secondary coaches are the same, but I know the OC kind of runs all that. But is that kind of the issue too? Does an OC want to bring in some of his guys? Does an OC who is the available OCs right now? Why is this such a holdup? I don't know.
Yeah.
You waiting for NFL guys to leak through? I don't know. You waiting for college guys to leak through? I don't know. So, I'll send a resume. I'll show you my Madden Pro and Madden college football profiles here. We'll do some more creativity than Buck Pierce. That's for sure. I'm still
holding out hope Kahari Jones is out there. Like, bring him home.
Yeah. I like Kahari, and maybe it was too much of a quick upgrade, but I'm kind of surprised that Andrew Harris. He I know it's not CFL, but he was coaching other leagues. Wasn't he a head coach of that junior team? So and an offensive guy. I'm kind of surprised they didn't even maybe give him a shot with some of those support pieces, especially if everything else hasn't changed. Give him a shot where under Osh, a guy he respects and knows, and he's got other staff that he knows, and he's got Caleros, and I think that would have been a real easy first team for him to be an OC for, honestly. But whatever, that's that. So that's why I'm kind of surprised that went that way. Or maybe he was thinking that somebody like our current running back coach or current offensive coach somewhere was going to get promoted, and that would be an opening, and that's not going that way either. I don't know. Osh is a D guy, so it's not like he's going to take over that, and he's already doing special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think he's going to be making out the playbook right now, so I have no idea what they're doing. Buzz and Boomer? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is Lapo even a thing? I don't even know.
It is. It's very interesting that they don't have one yet. Now, granted, the Montreal Alouettes didn't have an owner the year going into free agency, but they won the Grey Cup. So how much does it matter? But I think it matters a little more here where, the play style of your offensive coordinator, maybe you want to tailor your offense around that a little bit.
Well, I don't know if there's a hot take. I'm going to say, unless you're Jerry Jones where you have your fingers and everything, I'm going to say coaches matter more than the owner some degree. Especially if you're a hands-off owner, like we're going to talk about Washington's old owner that ruined the franchise, or Jerry Jones, sure. But I bet most players are like, well, we want to know who the coach, because that's like we don't care who the CEO of the company is. Like we're never going to see them. They're going to, for the most part, they're just signing checks to somebody that signs checks that our payroll pays us. We want to see our direct supervisor, our direct manager. That's the person you deal with 9 to 5, and I think that carries more weight of why, who are we going to do? And yeah, very interesting. Like, what if a guy like Mitchell doesn't fit into an offense like the new OC does, and Waller Tursky fit in better? Yeah. It's kind of little screw ups like that. But I guess a good OC would be able to change it on the fly and make the offense fit for the players you have, I guess. But yeah, very interesting. I kind of forgot about that. We're not having an OC.
We'll see if that news comes out in the near future. But yeah, that's all the news from the past week. That's all the questions so far. Do we want to start getting into a little prediction game here on our top 15 free agents?
Throw me a name and I'll tell you.
All right. Well, I've got them listed in the order we drafted them on last episode. Okay. So if you haven't listened to it yet and would like to, stop here so you don't get spoiled and then come back. The first one up was wide receiver Justin McInnes of the BC Lions, Canadian wide receiver. Any thoughts on where you see and we're going to be strict on this. You got to give me one team. You can't say it might be 5 different ones.
My crystal ball says he was on BC, going to Edmonton.
Edmonton.
Yeah.
Why Edmonton on Justin McInnes?
I just think that, because I was saying it earlier, just why not follow VA? Or not Edmonton, I mean Calgary. I meant Calgary.
Okay.
Calgary. Sorry, Calgary. I meant Calgary. I was Fajardo and Calgary. Going to follow VA, follow that kind of thing. You're still in the West. You still kind of have a recognized, Calgary to Vancouver is not a crazy move. It's not like flying to Montreal or anything and now having to learn French. I can't think off the top of my. Oh, I guess he got Philpott, but he's had some injury problems too. So maybe having a backup Canadian, or they run the two Canadians, kind of like Winnipeg has done. I think would benefit that.
I would say a Bagleton, McInnes, and Philpott top three is pretty nasty for VA to work with it out in Calgary if they can make that work. That would be my backup option. But I'm going to agree with what Richard's saying in the chat, which is I do think the BC Lions keep Justin McInnes because they are looking to cut some of that salary out there.
Well, I'm dumb. I didn't realize saying keeping was an option, but I'll stick with Calgary.
Of course, keeping's an option.
Well, I don't know why I thought they cut him, so I'm getting all my people mixed up right now.
Gotcha. Well, here's another one for you that hasn't been cut yet, but is a hot commodity. Defense back Tyrell Ford to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I believe, was your first pick in our draft of top free agents.
Oh, I'm not doing the two-team thing, but the Bomber fan in me wants him to stay here, but I do think he'll go with his brother in Edmonton.
I have Edmonton as well. Yeah. I think the opportunity to get paid to go get a big paycheck to go play with your brother. It's interesting that just a month or two ago, we were talking about Trey Ford coming to Winnipeg to play with his brother when it's a lot more realistic to be going the other way around right now.
Yeah, I thought I saw something about one of them saying they would love to play with each other, and everyone took that about Trey coming here. And now it's like, oh, just kidding. I think it was the other way around. So,
yep. We talked about him already on this episode quite a bit. Eugene Lewis of the Edmonton Elks. Is he getting that $300,000, and who's it from? I can go first on this one. I don't know. I have a hard time with it, and the money cut might not be worth it. And I was just saying you should go get the bag, but I think I might choose Edmonton because I look at every other team around here, and I think Lewis just wants to be that number one go-to guy, and everybody else has somebody where he would be kind of that 1A, 1B. And I think maybe he was building a really good connection at the end of the year with Trey Ford at the end of the year. So is he able to get a little bit more out of the Elks if other teams come knocking? Maybe. Are they going to? Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough sell. I'm not confident in this one, but give me Lewis back to Edmonton as number one receiver there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's Edmonton too. I think this is a little bit just public negotiation. I think a little bit. When you see a couple that fights and they post it on Facebook, I think that's what this is. And then and we all know they're going to get back together. So.
I like it. We move to the defensive side of the ball again, and we go to Toronto. The next three players are all from Toronto. Linebacker Winton McManus.
Give me Hamilton. They must be doing something. They must be with not really re-signing or having a bunch of people. Yeah.
That's exactly the direction I was going to go to with the Ticats, is that I feel like they lost a lot of their veteran pieces the last couple of years or last year after keeping them together for that 2019-2021 Cup run there. And I think McManus is an excellent piece and sounds like he wants money and sounds like the Argos aren't potentially willing to pay it. So, yeah, I would take Winton McManus going to Hamilton. In the chat, McManus to Calgary, I could see that because Toronto did get Judge from Calgary, so maybe there's a hole at linebacker for McManus to go there. He was from Calgary initially. Yeah, I could potentially see it, but I don't know. Hamilton's the first thing that comes to mind here. What about Kadeem Carey at running back? Our only running back to talk about on this list. I don't have a great answer for this one.
Can unsigned be an option?
Yeah.
I unfortunately think he might be unsigned, and whoever's got a big injury around August, September, and you can't really predict that. Like, if anything, or UFL. Like, I don't know. That's kind of where I got.
Yeah, just playing out the scenarios for Kadeem Carey, and we've talked about it in recent episodes as well. BC's got James Butler. I feel like they typically don't go too heavy on the running back, like backup running back option there. They've got some interesting pieces. Edmonton's got their like two guys in Rankin and Leak that they already paid this offseason. I don't see Carey going there. Saskatchewan's got their guys. Winnipeg's got Oliveira. They're probably not going to afford paying Carey's backup. They've got, who else am I missing here? Calgary is the one, like Dedrick Mills. I think Carey coming back to Calgary would be a good positional fit, but he trash talked them when he won the Grey Cup, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
probably. That bridge is burned. Does he go back to Toronto? What does Toronto look like at running back?
Did they just pick up somebody?
They signed Kevin Brown.
Yeah.
Does he come back to Toronto? Like, are they sold on Brown bouncing back after he struggled last year? Potentially not. Maybe. But that's a three-headed race there. Ottawa's got a couple of pieces. They've got a log jam there. Hamilton's really excited about Greg Bell, and they typically don't, again, do a second running back. So I don't know where Carey fits into here. I'm going to choose back to Toronto, I think, as my best option, because I don't know if there's another option out there. But I don't know if they're going to be willing to pay up based on who else they brought in. So I like your pick of potentially unsigned.
Yeah.
And on defensive line for Toronto, Jake Ceresna went over there in that Curly Gittins Jr. trade with Edmonton last offseason. I'm going to say Winnipeg. And this is my dream signing for Winnipeg, is to have Jake Ceresna opposite Willie Jefferson on that defensive line.
Oh, with Thomas in the middle. And who is that? They have a butt?
Garbutt?
Garbutt. There we go. Garbutt. Yeah, he's pretty deadly too. That rotation, that would be pretty deadly, actually. Yeah. I like that, but I don't have faith in that. Give me
Ottawa's brought back a lot of their defense.
I know. Son of a gun. Trying to think of a team with terrible offense or defensive line. I'll go with Winnipeg too, because now you got me excited about that. Garbutt, Jefferson, Thomas, and Ceresna. That would be, yeah.
Next, we move to linebacker Niles Morgan. Had over 100 tackles this season with the Edmonton Elks. You know what? I didn't pick McManus to go to Calgary earlier, but I like Niles Morgan going across the Battle of Alberta because they do have that pull from Cam Judge. They do have, who else was it? Micah Awe is currently a free agent. I like Niles Morgan to fill a hole out in Calgary.
Yeah, let's go with Calgary. I'm blanking on defense right now, but I think I agree with what you're saying.
Other option I guess I could think about would maybe be BC because Bola Combo just retired, but I'll go with Calgary as my first pick here. This was the guy you put on your list, Lucius Purifoy, defensive back. He's suspended for 2 games. Does he sign on free agency day, and who's looking to bring him in?
Give me Winnipeg, especially if we lose Tyrell Ford. I want him in Winnipeg. I'll take the 2 games off. A 32 or 33-year-old. Give him a month off. Say, hey, deal with your stuff, and then come back in July, and we'll go on a run. Especially if we lose Tyrell Ford to NFL or Edmonton or somewhere else.
Yeah, where's Purifoy gonna go? I'm gonna go with Hamilton, I think, here as well. I'm going to take Hamilton to make some defensive changes. First offensive lineman and only offensive lineman we're talking about here, Peter Godber of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. who needs most help on the offensive line from a veteran?
Give me BC. I think they can't. I think they got to give Rourke more time. I think that was one issue of his when he returned. That not that he isn't mobile, but I think the time in the NFL maybe forced him to try to stay more pocket because that's a little bit more of a pocket presence league. And then VA was able to scramble a little bit more, and then just give Rourke more time back there.
I like that.
Mixing him with Chung and those other guys, I think that would be good.
Yeah, I like that potential option there as well. I don't know the positional fits of the different offensive linemen here off the top of my head. I'm going to say Edmonton, though. Give Trey Ford a little bit more time back there to maneuver is what I'm going to say for Peter Godber. Keandre Smith made my list of top 5 remaining free agents. I think he was a 1,000-yard receiver or close to it this year for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, another Canadian option. Who needs a good Canadian receiver?
I think Hamilton needs to keep him.
Yeah.
Because who else are they going to throw? Who is Bo throwing to? If good Canadian option, who do they have?
Yeah, in terms of Canadians, I guess it was Smith, it was Hakuna Vanu, it was Brendan O'Leary-Orange, who both kind of had ups and down plays. So yeah, I like that for Hamilton. Ottawa, potentially. Could they bring in Keandre Smith? Trying to think of all the different teams. If BC can't fit Justin McInnes somehow, does he fit in there? I'm gonna say Ottawa. I'm gonna say Ottawa makes the push, and I'll be for Keandre Smith here. They've got the former Ticats GM as their GM. I'm gonna say they try to bring him in.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on one guy, but I just can't imagine Hamilton letting him go. Like you said, 1,000-yard receiver, Canadian. Even if you have a couple of Canadians, just follow the Winnipeg, put him in the Dembski spot and put another Canadian like Leary Orange or Hakuvana out there. And then, I don't know who else you would throw to. And I just remember him being on my fantasy team sometimes. Like you just can't get rid of a guy like that for no reason. So I get the sense that maybe he's just wanting to see what he could get paid from the other 8 teams and then tell Hamilton, and Hamilton will probably have to match it.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Nick Arbuckle made the list of yours at quarterback, our first quarterback we make predictions on here. Where do you think the Grey Cup MVP is going to land?
Unsigned. Same, put him in Kadeem Carey. I think so. I think he'll be another one of those guys that, and when I say unsigned, I'll say till preseason. Like, again, until an injury, until training camp opens up and you realize, maybe the guy we brought in doesn't have an arm. And I'm not trying to pin this guy, but maybe PJ Walker doesn't have an arm. Maybe VA something's wrong. Maybe MBT is something wrong in Montreal. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there's something wrong with some of these older guys. Maybe Caleros loses his passport and can't come up for training camp. I don't know. And something like that. And then I think maybe we'll see him come in, or even UFL, but or maybe the UFL is too soon. They probably have to be signed by now. Or I don't know how that works. Never mind. But something. Where does he fit in? Does he really want to be only in the CFL will the Grey Cup MVP be a backup?
Yeah.
And I just don't see it. But yeah.
I could see Winnipeg trying to bring him in to go all in on the Grey Cup this year. Like if Caleros goes down, Arbuckle's our option. That is the exact opposite of a succession plan, though, is Nick Arbuckle. But I'm going to say he sticks with Toronto. There's question marks on Chad Kelly's health. I think they would be fine having Arbuckle as their backup after what he did in the Grey Cup to start the season if they need to. Although I imagine Kelly will be good to go by the start of the season. Dalton Schoen is the next receiver on the list. Do you think he goes back to Winnipeg, or? I
mean, I think with the Wolotarski release is clear that they're trying to keep Schoen and Lawler. So yeah, I think he'll stay in Winnipeg.
I think so too. I think that it'll come down to the last minute, perhaps, but I think Dalton Schoen is the most integral piece for the Bombers.
Again, I don't blame any of these players waiting the 2nd to the 9th to hear from the other 8 teams. I don't blame any of them, especially the ones that haven't been released or anything. So yeah, you wait and hear, and you're like, oh well, wasn't it Lawler or some of them have taken pay cuts? Like, well, how much of a pay cut? Like again, if some team's going to offer you $300,000, you go play there.
Yeah.
Over the 150, but if they're only going to offer you 170, maybe you will play for Winnipeg for 150. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Damon Webb, defensive back for the Ottawa Redblacks. He's the one who had 3 interceptions against Chad Kelly in that one game this year, I think. Where do you think he's going to land? I can go first on this one. I haven't said the Riders for anything yet. I could see them, after the way their season ended at the hands of Kenny Lawler and getting burned at defensive backfield last year, I could see them making a splash for one of the top defensive backs out there, even though they did say they weren't going to be as active on free agency day.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'd even just say maybe Ottawa. He'll stay in Ottawa where they don't want to. We've already said they've kept a lot of the team back together, and he's one of the pivotal points and getting big picks against the division rival. It's not a guy you want to lose.
Yep, for sure. Kenny Lawler. So you're keeping Dalton Schoen in Winnipeg. Are you keeping Kenny Lawler there as well?
Yeah. And while we're at it, maybe we should talk alternative football. I'm assuming that's AFN Mike asked a question about Lawler, so maybe we'll touch on that. Do you guys feel Kenny Lawler can bounce back from his injury / suspension? Seems like a top free agent that way if injury and trouble free.
Well, the suspension is well behind him at this point.
Well behind him. And I mean, between the two, okay, I think he's a lot more remorseful than what Chad Kelly seems. So, you know what I mean? Like, I think, oh, hey, Matthew. Sorry, I didn't know. Yeah, I think Lawler's way past his suspension. He's had the whole, like, again, it's completely different. The whole community here in Winnipeg has supported him. It was a big thing. He said he was sorry. He's went through the steps. He had that other suspension like a year later from it, right? When he was actually in court for it or whatever. He's done his time. He's fine. Injuries, yeah, he's a little bit of a Band-Aid. But he comes up big when you have him. And yeah, between him and Schoen, I think the Bombers need to have that. Maybe they'll miss time June, July, August, but having them September, October, November is why you pay them the big bucks. And I think you need to have both of those guys in there. And hey, having both of those guys, then it means if you lose one at a pivotal time, at least you still got the other guy, where Lawler started picking it up sometimes when Schoen was out. So I think you got to have both. And he's fine. I run the risk of the injuries there. It's football. I mean, you can get hurt with anything.
I could see him going back to Winnipeg. I could see them trying really hard to re-sign both of them, but I'm going to go with Calgary. I'm going to go with, I think they're going to be looking for that one big receiver, and you kind of mentioned it was Justin McInnes, but I have him going back to BC. I think they're looking for a guy to pair with Bagleton. They're looking to load it up for VA. Going back to the question earlier about the coaching changes, if there's any coach on the hot seat this year, I think it's Dave Dickinson as coach and GM, right?
Yeah.
In Calgary. So we're going to see, this is going to be a weird year for Calgary and free agency where I think they'll actually spend money and see what they can spend, which we don't normally see. So give me Kenny Lawler as that option going to Calgary.
I think the trade for VA has shown that they're actually going to have to try to do something this year and build a team around him.
And then the last player from the ones we picked last week is Janarian Grant, who I know you wanted to have a discussion on today, a bit of a longer one. I think that I don't know if you want to go as deep into it as we did before, but you had kind of 4 teams in mind for Janarian Grant, right?
I saw, some of the CFL even posted. They said stay in Toronto. Was it Toronto, Saskatchewan, BC, and return to Winnipeg? And I thought Toronto at first was my number one. He's probably going to stay in Toronto. I wasn't feeling BC just because I felt like, they're already running up the salary cap, having to get rid of receivers and stuff like that. And I never thought about Winnipeg until maybe they let a certain Drew Wolodarski go and they let a couple other pieces go. So maybe there's a reunion in Winnipeg. But I still think number one is I know you said I'm not supposed to say multiple teams, but I definitely think Toronto's my best bet unless Winnipeg finds some other salary cap or he's willing to give a Winnipeg discount, which I don't know why he would, because he's been to the Grey Cup 5 straight years on his own. So,
I think I'm going to choose that return to Winnipeg. I think if they're trying to rectify what's happened the last couple of, last year in the Grey Cup, they're going to look at where were their holes last year. They didn't get enough pressure on the quarterback. That's why I said Serezna earlier. Then they didn't have a good return game at all this year. So, yeah, I think Winnipeg realized how much they missed him. I think BC is another good option because they let Terry Williams go. But I like Janneri and Grant going to Winnipeg.
Or give me Saskatchewan, just like I said, the Winnipeg Revenge Tour of Big Hill sign there, and Harris and all those guys in Winnipeg. I think that'd be funny as hell too. But no, I think do they still have their kick returner, or is he a free agent?
Where?
Saskatchewan.
Mario Alford, I think, he is a free agent, yes.
Okay, so that's because that's probably why Saskatchewan popped up there. Because are you willing to, those? I mean, those are two guys too. Do you pay them $200-300 or whatever their value? What's their value? Is the kick returner? We want to talk about resetting the market. It's an important part, but are you again at one point? Janneri and Grant was the rookie American that got paid nothing just catch a ball and be told you can't fair catch it. So, and now he's one of the most sought out players in the league, and all he has to do is, and I'm not trying to downplay it, all he's got to do is catch a ball, 6-7 times off a kick? So, it's not like, and he got used a little bit in the offense, but I mean, that's up there with being the DH in baseball, man. You just got to, you get a big touchdown. It's like the big home run is the DH. You just go sit on the bench now till halftime until the team kicks the ball off to you again. That's the dream, man.
Yeah, for sure. 4 names that are 4 quick ones maybe to talk about that are the guys we talked about as big releases earlier. Yes. We talked about Wolotarski, so I didn't throw him in the list. But Adam Bighill.
Give me a BC reunion.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling that because I'm joking about Saskatchewan. I honestly can't see him in green, and some hurts. I can't see him in the East. I don't know. I just have a tough time seeing him in the East. Maybe Calgary, if we're talking about. But I mean, I think they would go younger. Maybe Edmonton if they're trying to get a veteran presence in that defense. But no, I think BC.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was leaning for Bighill as well. What about Alexander Hollins after being cut by the Lions? I am going to Edmonton, I think. I think the pairing with Jordan Maximic as the offensive coordinator there in Edmonton, who was his OC in BC, probably believes a little bit in the ability that he has shown at times. You've got a great player personality coach in Mark Killam that might be able to help him get back on track a little bit. I see that being a good fit for Hollins in Edmonton.
And do you think that could be somewhat of a replacement for Lewis if he goes?
If they need
to, yeah. I could see
it. True. I did have Lewis going back to Edmonton. I'll still take both.
Though. Yeah, no, that's fair. Let's go off the board. Give me the Ticats because we're just talking about them not having much of a receiving core, and we don't know what Keandre Smith is doing. And Ottawa, I like their receiving core. Montreal, I like theirs. Toronto could definitely do better too. I feel like we're talking a lot about the West on some of these receivers, and I think the East. I think Hamilton. They need Bo. They need someone for Bo to throw to.
Yeah, I like that. Mike Rose on the defensive line again, a 4 or 5-time All-Star veteran defensive lineman.
Give me the Rough Riders.
Saskatchewan Rough Riders for Mike Rose.
I think if they are, again, not knowing their depth chart off the top of my head and their pieces, but I think that cold weather prairie football, you need a ferocious D-line and linebacking core, and I think that would be, again, if it's going to be a November playoff game in Regina or Winnipeg, yeah, give me him on that D-line to stop the Bombers from going to a 6th Grey Cup. Good God.
Give me Toronto for the Calgary to Toronto pipeline, and especially if they're going to lose a guy like Serezna potentially to free agency. I'm going to take Mike Rose
I like that.
to join Dinwiddie and co. in Toronto. Although he would have worked together with Corey Mace probably in his time in Calgary, so that fits good with your Saskatchewan theory there. So I like that. And let's finish off with the kicker, Boris Beattie. I'm trying to think of who needs a kicker.
The Brajas. I don't know. Not the Cleveland Browns, and they just trade for Tucker.
I think that was fake.
Hey, was that fake? Okay,
that was fake based on the news report that came out about.
That's fair. That just opened Twitter earlier today. I saw that, and I was like, "That's dumb." But yeah, I don't know. Who do you think needs a kicker?
I'm gonna say unsigned. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's bringing him in as like a backup situation at kicker. Saskatchewan, like the other guys who were not kind of close in terms of percentage, like Lauder was 82%. Castillo was only 79% on his field goal last year, but the Bombers already re-signed him. I'm going to say Boris Beattie remains unsigned.
No, I can vibe with that one because I'm trying to think of who needs a kicker and.
Unless somebody brings him in to punt. I think he can punt. I think he's done all three before. So unless somebody brings him in to fill that role, but I'm going to say he's outside at this point.
Bombers need a better punter unless that Australian guy can actually kick it properly. But no, probably unsigned, especially since he could do both. I'm actually surprised that the CFL seems to be tending to having two guys doing it because we felt for a long time. I feel like most teams have one guy doing both. And then now a lot of teams have been transitioning to the two kicker system. So we'll see.
All right, that's our list of I don't know, like 20 guys, pretty much. Yeah, we did we did 19, I guess. We did 19 of them, close enough to 20.
Who's drafting Curtis Rourke? That's
Curtis Rourke, who's drafting him?
Yeah. Who's taking the swing in the CFL, taking him on the getting his rights, even though he'll probably get NFL drafted for a year or two.
I'm trying to find the draft order. Like, what's the draft order like this year?
I can't see him going in the first round, so I don't think the order matters too much, other than maybe someone in the early third round or fourth round might be willing to swing. But
I'll say the Ticats, I guess, because how much time does Bo have left, and we don't know about their backup situation, and I don't see the Bombers going that direction.
That was the exact way I was going, so we got the same. There we go. There's our 20.
All right, I like it. There's our list of 20. We'll keep track of that throughout the offseason, see who got it best, because everything has to be a competition this offseason. I put a poll up, by the way, last week from our little team drafts on the various platforms, and yours truly was voted as having the best list of top 5 free agents.
That's not fair because it's a popularity contest. Nobody likes me and Adam.
This would be the first time in my life I have won a popularity contest, if that's the case.
Well, haters gonna hate, and they just,
Anyways, we'll see how many of these guys get signed. Hopefully, most of these guys remain on the list throughout the next week. So we have a lot to talk about when Free Agent Frenzy comes up. Let's get right into wrapping things up today. I guess before we do the outro stuff, Super Bowl pick. Or is that...
That's 2 weeks, so we can, if we're having a show next week, we can do it
next week then.
Yeah. Who's winning the Pro Bowl dodgeball dodgeball contest?
Is that something you can bet on?
Probably. I haven't seen it.
I'm sure it is. If you can bet on senior hockey in Saskatchewan, you could bet on Pro Bowl dodgeball. But yeah, I'm sure we'll be back next week. It'll be in the middle of the negotiation window. Exact date and time to be determined, because I know it can't be next Thursday night. I've got a conflict. Well, it can be. I just won't be here. So if you and Adam want to, go ahead. But stay tuned on all of our social media to find out when we are going to be doing our next episode, or just hit the little subscribe button on YouTube, and then you'll get notified whenever we do go live or schedule a new episode there. But you can follow us on X at CF Countdown Pod, on Blue Sky as well at CF Countdown Pod, Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod. Check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network as well at CF Pod Network on X, and also our friends at the Alternative Football Network at the official AFN on X or alternativefootballnetwork.com. I saw Matthew from AFN in the chat here this evening, so thanks for tuning in. And like we talked about at the start, well, first of all, a reminder to check out the link in the episode description for the Discord if you would like to join us over there and continue the conversation. You can tell us what size screen you've been watching the podcast on. Can anybody top 100? We'll see. But the main thing, like we said off the start, we are very much focused on planning Free Agent Frenzy 2025. Tune in 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time, February 11th. Join us there. Fundraiser for CFL Fans Fight Cancer. Hoping to make this event a big success. We've got a great lineup of guests I've been working on. Free agent tracker ready to go on the screen. Trey and Adam have been doing a ton of promotional stuff to get it up and running. So thanks y'all for taking that, and shout out to everybody who has interacted with the post so far, and do what you can to help us spread the news, because this event is the more people that hear about it, the more successful this event is, and we make nothing off of this ourselves. We put it on every year for the love of doing it, and would love to do some good in the world as part of that as well. So hope everybody joins us for Free Agent Frenzy 2025 and help us spread the word.
Yeah.
Where can people find everything you've got going on, Trey?
You can find me at Twitter or X, whatever it's called, at Trey MB Harness. Got horse racing stuff like always, some UFC. I'm actually optimistic about the Blue Jays lately. I've stopped paying attention. They've got some big re-signings, and I guess pitchers and catchers must report soon. So I'll be probably bitching about the Blue Jays going 0-30 over spring training soon. There, yeah, Trey MB Harness. And quick shout out, just because there might be some crossover. My harness racing, I started a new website. I'm so close to 2,000 views in 2 months. I wanted to hit in the 2 months mark, which would have been 2 days ago, but I'm just like at 1,950 something. So if there is any crossover, if anybody who gets annoyed by me talking about horse racing checks out once in a while, thank you for clicking on it. And if you don't click on it, start clicking on it, because a click, a like, a share, even on this show, that show, every show, it helps out, man. The algorithms work. Just little like, little smiley face, little angry face, whatever. Give me the middle finger emoji. I don't care. It helps the algorithms.
What's the URL?
Oh, the westernpacer.ca.
I'm going to go click it 43 times after this show to help you get to the number you need.
Man, it's wild. Look at the tracker. I'm sure maybe we see it on the podcast sometimes. Like, I get clicks from Brazil out of nowhere and all these places. I'm like, cool. It's probably some person trying to hack my information, but I'll take it.
All right, I gave you at least 2. I'll give you some more after the podcast is over. Let's run up the numbers. There's a great ad for Free Agent Frenzy 2025 on the homepage there as well.
There is.
Go check that out at westernpacer.ca.
And if you want some ad space on one of the up and coming Western harness racing websites, you reach out to me, because I'm starting to sell ad space. See, the Canadian Football Countdown got in on it first, but starting soon. There
we go. Just send me the bill in the mail. And I probably won't open it.
That's fine. That's a waste of $1.20 or whatever stamp is these days. So I won't worry about it.
You can find me on social media platforms at CooperTrooper42, but there's not much value in doing that. I don't really use them. But you can find me there if you'd like. And I mentioned the Discord already. So yeah, let's wrap this up. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. On behalf of Trey, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.